To thank everybody for coming out this evening. We're very excited. We did the math today and we're getting ready to start our third year of our lecture series. So we started this a couple years ago. And at that time we talked to our Dick Fauss here about doing the movie night, and I think you're going to enjoy it tonight. But before we get to Dick, I'd like to tell you guys some of the things that are coming up. On Thursday, 2 days from now, some folks from the State Historic Preservation Office are going to be here, and they're going to be talking about historic preservation and cemeteries. So we're going to have Carolyn Kinder and Sarah Pryor from the State Historic Preservation Office, and they're going to be talking about cemeteries and the National Register of Historic Places. So if you're interested in that, we'll be back here Thursday night at 7:30 again, so put that on your calendars. On July 5th, next month, we're having Jim Mitchell, who works for the West Virginia State Museum. He's going to be talking about car china and decorating car china. And he's going to bring some things up from the collection that are used to put the designs on plates and other pottery. So he'll be here. In August, we're going to have Travis Henline, and he's going to be, I'm not going to try to read this. I have flyers up here in the corner of the table you can see when you read it. But he's going to be talking about language and cultural revitalization among the Eastern Band of the Cherokee. So that will be in August 2nd, and it's going to be an interactive one. So he's going to ask you guys to participate with him as he goes through his presentation. On September 6th, we're going to have Bob Beanblossom from the Parks, West Virginia State Parks. And he's going to be talking about the history of West Virginia State Parks. So make sure you put those things there on your calendar and come out and see us. Our speaker tonight, Dick Fauss, I think he's got one of the coolest jobs here at the Archives. From time to time, I'm left to be the only person to answer the phone. It's a very sad day for callers in because I don't do very well with the phones. But when they call in for Dick, it's always shocking because they'll say, this is, they give their name, and I'm working on something for Diane Sawyer. Can I speak to Dick Fauss? And the lady, I'm the producer for the Oprah show. Can I speak to Dick Fauss? And, you know, it's just really amazing the people from around this country that call Dick to ask him for footage that we have in our archives. And it always makes me very proud of the work that he does here, that he's so well known across the country as a go-to guy. And you can always tell when it's a big news story breaks because every call coming in is for Dick. If you're a friend of the Archives, you know Dick. He's been here a while. And I think the things he's going to show you tonight you're really going to like. So without further ado, Dick Fauss.
Well, thanks, Brian, for that generous introduction. First of all, welcome to coming out on a night that is this threatening weather-wise. We appreciate it. As Brian mentioned, this is yet another in our continuing series of programs to highlight different aspects of what we do at the Archives. If the old saying is true that a picture is worth 1,000 words, I wonder how much more it would make it if motion is added to the picture, or how much more valuable it would make it if the element of sound is added to the picture. And so we'll explore those in a little bit of detail, probably not enough, but some detail tonight, and it is interesting to contemplate. I should point out many of the films we're going to show tonight will end up on our YouTube channel or our website, so you'll be able to see them again and examine them in a little greater detail if they went by too quickly or something and you want to see it again. It'll take us a while to put them up, I think, but we've been doing that. Some institutions have a very solid plan for putting things out on the web that they get a motion. Like Marshall University, who has the WSAZ Huntington Bureau collection, does it this day in history. And so every day, you know, it's an old wisecrack that sometimes, you know, what happened on this day in history, well, nearly nothing sometimes. So we just have a different approach. It might be what one of my old professors called the chaotic interpretation of history, just one thing after another. If we see something that's interesting, we'll try and put it on the website. Sometimes it's pure happenstance what we find. but we try and mix things up and make things interesting. A lot of what you're going to see tonight is made possible by our ongoing program of film identification. We have a couple very good volunteers, one of which I'll mention is Bill Kelly, who started right out of high school. He worked for WCHS, then worked for WSAZ, then at the end of his career worked for public broadcasting. He is a really fine historical mind. He knows what's important in a lot of ways and why it's important. He's listened to a lot of reporters over the years and seems to remember nearly everything. So a lot of the things, particularly about Charleston history, since I did not grow up here, I'm anxious to learn from Bill, who comes in every Wednesday, and we look through film for a couple hours, and I type it into the computer. Before that, we recorded it on cassette. So we have his identification can be a little richer because he recognizes people, and that helps. Another volunteer I'd like to recognize is Jim Wilburn, who's come in and done a lot of grunt work copying from the shot sheets on our tapes. At least we have notebooks that are in chronological order of the shot sheets. That helps us find things when all we have to go on is a date, which is the big thing, a date and type. Although the collection had a few good pieces, it really dates back to 1976 when it really started in earnest. That was the year WSAZ gave its Charleston Bureau footage to the West Virginia State Archives and its Huntington Bureau footage to Marshall University Special Collections, being a two-bureau operation. And those trivia people out there might have heard or might not have heard that local lore says that the two anchor newscasts done by WSAZ predated Huntley and Brinkley, and that Huntley and Brinkley was in fact modeled after the WSAZ newscast, the Huntington-Charleston newscast. They dreamed up with the idea of combining the markets to get a bigger market, hence more prestige, and this has worked pretty well over the years. The WSAZ collection, early Charleston footage is actually at Marshall from about 1952 to late 1957. It started being kept here. We thought it was a couple of years later, but thanks to the identification we did, when Bill Kelly was looking at it, he said, you know, so that's one of the first stories I shot, looking at a piece of film. I said, okay, that's 1957. I remember that. That's when they hired me at WSAZ. So we're always learning things about the collection, and that was one of the things. The next piece that fell into place was Charles Ryan had taken part of the WCHS collection when he formed Charles Ryan Associates. In order to save it from the dumpster, he'd taken it and thought, well, there's some stock shots, I can use some of this. And later, we realized that when the cars got too old, that well, maybe it might have a little historical value. So by about 1981, he was looking to give it someplace, and he gave it to the archives. It's not as large a collection. It goes back to probably 1955, but from 1955 to about 1969 is fairly sporadic. From 71 to 75 it's pretty rich. Later, thanks to WSAZ person who worked at CHS, we started to get videotapes. And so we got them from starting about 1980. There's a gap of about 5 years we don't have. And again, WOWK came to us a little later because of that connection. Along the way, about 1982, when I first joined the staff, we picked up WTRF Wheeling from about 1955 to 1980. And a little bit of smattering of WVVA Bluefield. 75 to 82. By the time we got to them, they'd thrown away all their old stuff. They didn't think they needed it anymore. Kind of a sad commentary on some of the television stations have done that and not realized it is valuable to other people other than themselves. And we certainly thank all our donors. We also have a public broadcasting collection. Thanks to the efforts of people like Bill Kelly and Russ Barber. If you know Russ's work, he worked for public broadcasting. If there's a historical documentary to be done that goes in depth. Russ may well have done it. There are other talented people there, but he probably loves history more than most. He's done a documentary on William C. Marland and West Virginians in War and several other, also a long one on Kent Heckler a couple of years ago, maybe just 1 year ago. We have a number of things besides news film in the collection. We have some documentaries. We'll show a couple smattering pieces of documentaries. We also have home movies. We'll show a couple examples of those. Those are a little more difficult to deal with because the good stuff is a little further between. You have to really search out for it in between the birthday parties and things, which are important to the people that took them, but a little less so to us. We have a number of film formats in the collection, which I'll briefly show. As far as news, or as far as film itself, the largest we have is just 35 millimeter. This is the theatrical size, and we do not have much of this, but this happens to be a newsreel short, 1928, I think. And then a lot of what we have is 16 millimeter. You might have noticed the size of the frame for 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter, which is basically, this is a roll, 1,200-foot roll of film from WSAZ. This happens to be 1961 film. 1,200 feet is about 35 minutes, 38 minutes, something like that. This is supposedly a vented film can. The film rests on these channels, and it's important for film to breathe. So, and there are these vents in there, so it helps preserve film. Saw the size of 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter is like a quarter of the size, so hence also a quarter of the quality. 8 millimeter, which is a home movie format, is a quarter of the size of 16 millimeter. So if you start seeing these home movies, you see a definite drop off in quality. It takes a really good transfer process to bring it out. But if it's well focused, well photographed, 8 millimeter can still, if it's the right thing, can be a very good image. People used to look not so kindly on these boxes, but the more archivists have looked at them, they think, you know, they may be paper and they may be old, but they breathe, which is the whole point of this higher tech film can, is it breathes and so does the box. So don't despair if you have your home movies in these. It's okay. It's probably better than a tight can. 8 millimeter went along and evolved also at Super 8. They made the perforations in the film smaller. This basically is 16 millimeter perforation sizes with an extra perf added between the frames. 8 millimeter shrunk the perfs till they're more like pin size or knitting needle size. Well, that's not right, but anyway, they're smaller than this, and expanded the picture, added a mag sound stripe for those who really went high tech, and that format lasted a few years, probably from 72 to maybe when video started to take over. Video formats. You all recognize this VHS. You all have them. They're not too bad. They're not great, but if that's all you have, you can take a good VHS recording and bump it to a superior format and still have a good quality. You can preserve the quality pretty well. This is a professional format. A lot of our videotape is of this format. Is starting to age, and we have starting to get problematic playback. This is a 1/2 inch professional format. A lot of our tapes are in this, and these recorders tend to be a little more pricey. This is, well, you can see what this is, a WSAZ tape, a Jessica Ralston tape, as a matter of fact. So our WSAZ collection goes up to about 4 years. When it's 4 years old or so, we get it. That may change. You're putting things on Blu-ray. You're going to put them on Blu-ray soon, so we'll see how that goes. This is a form of digital beta. So we had to buy a recorder for that. Or actually, not a recorder. Recorder is very expensive. We bought a player. The players are cheaper, but we can at least extract the tape. This is a professional format, very antiquated 2-inch video, and it was played on a machine probably as big as a couple of those bookcases, side to side, reel to reel, and we've just gotten some of this back from a place in Cincinnati. I like to pride myself that I can fix things, but I found when I got up against a 2-inch video machine, there was a whole lot I couldn't fix, didn't even understand. You have to be a real television engineer and know the format to be able to handle those. So, in the process of sending some of our tapes over, we found out that this is bad videotape, and this is good videotape. In order to play these, they have to be heated up for maybe 2 days, and not heated up much. People say, well, you bake videotape. Baking is a bad word. You don't really bake it. You heat it to maybe, I don't know, 105 degrees or something for drive the moisture out, and that lets them play the videotape. You'll see an example of a 2-inch restored. Well, I have probably talked enough about that. If anybody has any questions, you can get me on the phone, and I'll try to answer. I'll try to answer tonight, for that matter, if we have time. You'll see a couple documentary films. The first one I'll show is Charleston Beautiful on the Canal. It's a small piece from it. That was done in 1932. It was a sound motion picture sponsored by the Daily Mail and the Pierce Theater. Every film like this has a story, and so does this one. I wasn't around when we found it, but when they were tearing down the Pierce Theater, they found this can of film, and it was Charleston Beautiful on the Canal, 35 millimeter. So the commissioner at the time, Norman Fagan, Steve Fesmeyer, who a lot of you may know, each of them ponied up some money. They sent it out, and they had new 60 millimeter prints dropped, and it's still kind of a favorite. And what I want to look at it in terms of is, since it was a sound movie, it's very rare. We don't have sound. I'd say maybe 25% of our films have sound. So some of the stuff you'll see is a lot of it's silent. But sound is kind of rare, and if you're a stickler about authentic sound effects, if you search like Russ Barber would in these movies, you will find, say, streetcar sound, or the horns from automobiles as they sounded in 1932, a newsboy calling out for the Daily Mail, although based on the recording equipment for Charleston Beautiful, everybody that was a kid sounded like they stepped off the set of Spanky and Our Gang. But other than that, it's what you have. The second one you'll see is something called West Virginia and its Natural Resources, 1951. I owe finding that one to the staff here. Somebody found a press release for that movie in 1951, found it when they were looking for something else. Those of you that have done historical research realize the value in that. You're looking for something else, and you trip across something you're not looking for. But it's interesting, so if you have time, you make a copy. So somebody made a copy of this film release, threw it in my box. I pulled it out and said, well, there's a movie we'll never see. Then I read it a little more carefully and said, Weirton had something to do with it, Weirton Steele. And they used to have a fine film collection. I wonder if they still have it. So I called up there, and Weirton was closed down. But somebody said, well, they did give all their stuff to a local museum. So I found a guy, Dennis Jones, up there, very fine operation, newsletter, if any of you did it. So allowed us how they did have the film, and we might borrow it and transfer it, and I said, well, we'll make you a copy, you know, so we did all that. You'll see a little of that. In West Virginia, it's Natural Resources. That's the second film. I'm going to really stop talking in a minute, and we'll watch some movies. You'll see a lot of films highlighted I think it's Melanda Hereford herd that was a beef cattle herd down in the Greenbrier area. Very famous. Not long ago, Bill and I were looking through the 64 film and found an auction where they were selling off some of the herd, and that's tagged on the end of the movie. It's time to watch movies. I apologize for talking so long. We'll get going here. We really will.
You notice we even had the privilege of going through that red light. Of course, you can't tell it it's red in the picture, but then if it was red, we came right on through it. Now watch as we turn the corner from Foyer into Capitol Street. We're all going to go off here in a minute. You know, the young gentleman on that car that just got on there with a Panama hat. He seems to be enjoying it. Getting a lot of exercise from it or something or other. And here we are on Charleston Street at the intersection of Tennessee Avenue. We look down Tennessee Avenue. Looking down Charleston Street toward the west end of the city.
This ice cream cart coming out. Next one is West Virginia's natural resources with the news film of the area.
Activity lit by flaming Bessemer furnaces and moving to the pulsing rhythm of hundreds of industries. With tremendous supplies of water pouring down the deep-cut canyons and streaming into mighty rivers. With almost inexhaustible power drawn from rich deposits of coal, widespread petroleum fields, and a wealth of natural gas. This is West Virginia, the mountain state, building its fortune and its future out of its great natural resources. Next to bituminous coal mining, agriculture is the largest single occupation in West Virginia. A leader in the breeding of white-faced Herefords, West Virginia attracts buyers for these prime animals from all over the United States. Dairy herds add to the state's wealth with a high production of dairy products. Does everybody recognize a reporter? Very good. Just a quick note about West Virginia's natural resources, that film attempted and succeeded in showing nearly every industry in the state as it existed in 1951. That opening shot across the bridge was Weirton as it looked in 1951, which is not Weirton like it looked in 1990. It's a completely different look. I mean, they even went to interwoven mills in Martinsburg. It went nearly everywhere. Great film. A little nostalgia is a good thing. We found a few people, and first being Phyllis Curtin.
Miss Curtin, I hope this is fair to ask you this question, but how do you think West Virginia stands among the other cities in their cultural progress?
Well, you know, I'm not here a great deal, so I don't know. You have a symphony orchestra, which is a marvelous thing for a city of this size. American orchestras are really rather the musical pride of the United States. I think we've done better with them than almost any other thing. As I say, I'm not having lived in West Virginia for a long time, I'm really not completely aware of everything that goes on, but I've been impressed with the things that have been happening at the university in the fine arts, and I hear about that from various friends of mine who are there. There are an awful lot of fine musicians around West Virginia, teaching, performing. I think we're in the world, you know, very well.
Do you have anything to say to the aspiring young singers or future opera singers in the state?
Well, I'm mad about young singers, and I'm interested in what they do. But I think the most important thing to say to American young singers, certainly, is patience. Everybody wants to be a great artist at the age of 25, and that's not possible for a singer. You have to live a lot longer and learn a lot more. To young singers, the most important thing is learning first how the instrument functions, how it works, how to make it perform the way you want it to. And by all means, it's the same for anybody, whether he's in the coal business or electronics or singing, to learn foreign languages, which is probably, I think, the most important extra thing, apart from your basic craft, that I can think of. Very useful in everything.
Obviously, an opera singer, which I did not say. Next person I'd like is another someone I'd like for you folks to guess at. Staff members that have been around for a while are not eligible to participate.
First, Tom, I think the most important thing, even ahead of financing, is to demonstrate support. That is support from every segment of the community. I think it should be, again, clear that this is not a Jackson County project. Jackson County is acting in behalf of the state, and particularly the Golden Triangle region. The Improvement Association hopes to form a board of directors representing the state, and their job then will be to arrange a proposal to present to the Pittsburgh Symphony.
Okay, who was that? Oh, my. Okay,
Carol
that was
knows. Carol knows.
Carol. He certainly is. Norman Fagan, First Commissioner of Culture and History. At this time, there was a scheme afoot. I don't know how serious it was, but the Pittsburgh Symphony was looking for a summer home, and Ripley was under consideration, and that's what that was about. And of course, there were other places under consideration as well. Next person you'll recognize. I think this is the 1964 Miss West Virginia contest. Those of you that know your Miss West Virginias. Exactly. Yeah, Ella Dean. Obviously, Judge and Mrs. Kessel. This is when she returned from Atlantic City.
think you'd really do that well?
No, I didn't. Truthfully, I went for one purpose, and that was to represent West Virginia. And I was astounded when they announced the top 5, and very, very pleased when they announced number 3.
What was your reaction at that moment?
My reaction was trying to remember what they had told the third person to do, which was stand up. So, you know, just about what the reaction was. I was really quite taken back.
What sort of reaction to you as Miss West Virginia did you find in Atlantic City?
Terrific. We took several products of West Virginia with us, West Virginia glass, and people treated us with a great deal of warmth, a true, sincere warmth. And we left Atlantic City, and they knew we were there, and I think I enjoyed being there, and I hope they enjoyed our presence too.
What lies ahead of you now, Dee?
I'd like to stay around the state for the rest of the year, and I'm hoping to just continue to be Miss West Virginia.
What will you do with that scholarship money?
Go on to school next year. The plans are still tentative as to where.
What do you think of the new Miss America?
I think she's a very fine girl, and I'm very proud of her as my Miss America because she has a great deal of depth and a great deal of sincerity.
Among the West Virginia musicians who are famous for country square dancers.
Okay, as you can surmise, this actually was originally on 2-inch. Well, not that's how we got it. Those of you that know public broadcasting recognize Mary Lucille DeBerry. The fiddler, the musicians are Grant County, and well, one actually lives in Mineral. She says Israel Tom Welch, which we had a total of one time to Vandalia. When Bobby Taylor did his program a while back, he mentioned he had a lot of musical history, and oddly enough, technology has helped traditional musicians by creating records of musicians and in the early days, through the 20s, and so they can listen to each other and you don't have to physically be there. But this is a recording of these musicians done in the early 80s.
Israel is on a family farm in Mineral County, and Tom in the adjoining county is Grant. Their repertoire is varied. We'll talk a little about their music and hear samples from it.
That's what boys like us on the farm. We like to play music. And that's all the enjoyment we get out of life, is going out playing with music.
How often do you play together?
Oh, maybe every 3 weeks or a month. That's where we don't live in the same place. If you live down the farm, I live in Petersburg. And I help him play for a dance maybe every 3 weeks or a month.
Now, do you play regularly at a specific dance, or do you play around the country?
We've been playing regular with that dance, I expect, for 6 or 7 years. Way too long, I put that away, but that's what we've been playing. And we have another place we've been playing over at Rye, over West Virginia. That was on Friday night, and dance on New Creek on Saturday night. So we'll come down for one dance a week now, down in New Creek, West Virginia.
Well, now, how long have you played? When did you first start playing the fiddle?
I've been playing about 6 or 7 years. I was about 13 years old when I began playing.
How did you learn?
Well, my older brother got a fiddle, and I started playing and learned a few tunes. That's the way I learned to play.
Israel too played as a boy.
I started playing the mandolin. We already had too many fiddle players. So I went down as they drop out and pick up different instruments. I tried to play the mandolin, the 5-string banjo, the guitar, and the piano. And then occasionally, well, the harp.
Now, did one specific person teach you, or did you pick up from a lot of people around your community?
I guess what I learned most of it from my brother Tom here. He was older and he played the violin and I heard him play it. Sometimes I'll go out to work in the hayfield all day and pick up the fiddle and play a few tunes before I go to the rest of the night. I mean, it kind of relaxes me. That's what I see.
What about you?
Well, I don't care much about playing. I did back. I like to hear it, but I don't care too much about playing anymore. When I'm tired, I can't play anything. I never try to play when I'm tired, but he does.
Do you like to listen when you're tired?
Sure, I love to listen. I love to listen to music anytime. Any kind of music back.
I find the versatility of some of these traditional musicians pretty impressive. The fact that they switched instruments, they each play a variety of instruments.
Is Bill and Tom Welch, West Virginia musicians.
Next selections are a few places that are not here anymore. Those of you that grew up around here recognize Arnold Park, which was across from the Naval Ordnance Plant. And this is, according to Bill Kelly, not too long before it was the development was torn down. As you can see, they're pretty substantially built homes, and and also you'll recognize that there are many neighborhoods in Charleston suffered because of the interstate. That's just sort of the politics of interstate building. WSAZ title I left in, probably inadvertently. This is, I think, drilling pilings for bridge supports. Here's a famous old landmark that isn't around anymore. The interesting part of this was that the reason there was a news story on this was not to document the original Shoney's. It was they were having a Count the Strawberries pie contest. And so inadvertently we get documentation of something. It's not a very long shot. In fact, I tacked the beginning shot on the end again to give a better look at it. Now we'll finally get into the political section. Years ago, my mother told me that politicians were funny. Well, sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. But she talked about, he says, oh, they read recipes over the radio and do this and that. And I realized when I got older and studied a little more, she was describing Huey Long to me, and some other people. But 1968 was probably one of the more interesting years politically, at least we have some film of it, so we'll show it. We'll start, let's see, I think I'm going to start with Bobby Kennedy. I could have actually talked over this. Whenever he came to visit, the crowds were extremely big and enthusiastic. He was in Charleston several times. This happens to be from 1968, but he was in town a good bit in 1965, or well, at least a lot of film was shot of him on one occasion. Ken Heckler, as you notice, shaking his hand. This was taken in Logan, I believe. There was a famous still picture that he was just contemplating, I guess, the political world. And the next films we'll see are actually home movies, which was given to me, and when we get into them, I'll give you the credit. These were shot by a gentleman named Woodrow Womack, and were given by his son, Jesse Womack, and were with the stipulation that they be properly credited. So I will do that. They were given a pretty, the transfer is pretty good, really. Again, I think this would be Super 8, the slightly larger picture version of 8mm. He had a decent transfer done. Unfortunately, he informed me the films themselves were lost in one of the floods, but he did manage to preserve the transfer. So this is also an example of what a decent VHS tape can still look fairly good when it's bumped to a better format. think it is coming up here. Okay. This, 1968, the entrance of George C. Wallace into the race really changed the dynamic of things, and a lot of people commented on it, and it was a very interesting to a lot of people. William F. Buckley Jr., you think, what the heck is he doing in town? Well, I've been told that he was a classmate of Ned Chilton's. You think, why in the world would they visit? They probably didn't agree on anything, but apparently they may have liked to argue or something. So he was visiting town. He comments on Wallace's candidacy and also a little dust-up he had with Gore Vidal at the time, I think, and I'll let him explain.
I don't think so, because when you say the Wallace people, it's a little bit hard to answer, because I don't doubt there are conservatives who are voting for Wallace, any more than I doubt there were liberals who voted for Henry Wallace. But in both cases, in my judgment, they were mistaken. That is to say, Wallace is not a conservative, he's a populist. And he is, I think, to conservatives pretty much what Huey Long was to liberalism. He is also considerable embarrassment, because the goals that are pronounced are, on the one hand, are very similar to goals that are genuinely advanced, but the manner in which they are pronounced, and the whole approach, sort of to herald the mediating factors in society, is what I think makes Wallace a populist, which he's then he wants to call himself. I think he's not, or maybe he didn't know what it meant, but in any case, this tends to be characteristic of his method of expressing himself, approaching the demarks without any reference at all to the intervening and mediating institutions, which I think a conservative has very much got to worry about for the obvious reasons. Among them being that if everybody plays this kind of game, it might be played by people who advocate ends that are thoroughly anti-conservative. Well, I was asked by ABC about a year ago if I was here on a daily basis to comment on the elections, and since this is what I do, I comment on world affairs. I didn't see any reason to reject that invitation. They did not then tell me who the other commentators would be. It was not my business to ask, which is why I didn't ask. Would that make a difference to you? Well, in retrospect, it would have, yeah, because I don't think that it's possible to have conversations or analysis with certain kinds of people. If you say no answer at all, then how do you proceed? Mr. Dow speaks from a sort of extra institutional point of view. He despises America. He despises institutions. He's completely cynical about the motives of all politicians. And he feels that he has to introduce a situation with all kinds of contumely. And under the circumstances, I myself have not have done it again under the circumstances. And he might say something about me, only he's wrong.
A few scenes of his campaign headquarters. This is obviously on a slow day. In some of this film, you will see, those of you that have looked at let's say the president's cigarette smoking, you'll find meetings where clouds of smoke are in evidence, and then just that one cigarette just reminded me of that.
Stop all of Wallace's known views that he has made publicly.
You consider Wallace a racist?
Wallace does not consider himself a racist.
Do you consider him a racist?
I do not consider him a racist. I consider George Wallace a model. It is the book liberals of the North who have burned this epitaph at George Wallace. He's a fine man.
You've changed positions several times. You're a Republican, a Democrat, a liberal Democrat,
matters and liberal where the real needs of the people are concerned. And you know that I have rescued this state for over a year and 4 months prior to the primary, and people well know my views on these matters. I did not run then on the George Wallace per se name. I ran on the George Wallace platform, although the newspaper people did not pick that up.
George Wallace, the independent candidate for...
I'm sorry, that was Peter Beater, I didn't get it. Uh-oh.
No, I don't think so, because when you say the Wallace people, it's
No, we're in trouble.
because I know that there are conservatives who are voting for Wallace, any more than I doubt there were liberals who voted for Henry Wallace.
I'm sorry, that gentleman that appeared before was Peter Beater, who sort of, I kid you not, it was his name, spelled B-E-T-E-R, I found out, but he attached himself to the Wallace candidacy, and if I hadn't messed up the machine here,
I have always been, Charlie, as you know, I have always been conservative in fiscal matters and liberal where the real needs of the people are concerned. And you know that I have rescued this state for over a year and 4 months prior to the primary, and people well know my views on these matters. I did not run then on the George Wallace per se name. I ran on the George Wallace platform, although the newspaper people did not pick that up.
George Wallace, the independent candidate for president, says he needs all the help he can get if he's to be elected. But apparently he's getting some unwanted help in West Virginia in the form of Peter Beater, a write-in candidate for governor. Bill Frost, national campaign coordinator for Wallace, is in Charleston today, and he has this to say about it.
As far as we know, we have no connection whatever with the Wallace campaign in West Virginia. Fact of business, I have never met the guy, and I've never seen the man in person.
Would you like to disassociate yourself from Beater?
Well, we would appreciate anybody's support for the governor, but not to benefit their own cause or further their own cause. And we feel that Mr. Beater is trying to further his own cause, associating himself with the governor. And it just don't seem right to me.
Beater apparently is buying radio time, endorsing Wallace, and then putting his own claim on the end of it, paid for by Peter Beater. Has he contacted you at all about these activities?
No, sir, not the state headquarters. No, sir. He says he does. He has Montgomery headquarters, but they tell us in Montgomery that he hasn't talked to people we know.
Wallace hasn't shelved the posters, and in this case, apparently the it is Peter Beater. Wallace has him, whether he wants him or not. But native Governor Wallace, is there any romantic interest between Governor Wallace and Jenny Welch?
I don't know. All I can say, she's a pretty little thing, that's about all I can say. I just, this is just, I tell you, you know, when you go, I've been with the governor, I took a leave after about 21 months ago, and I've been involved with the same on and off, and the thing about it, I've seen a lot of different ladies, you know, from 2 to 93 kiss him on the cheek, so I imagine that there'd be a lot of them that could say the same thing.
George Wallace hasn't taken a stand against any race, to my knowledge. I've never heard him or read anything, and he has some rather outspoken views on race, on the racial question.
No, to my knowledge, maybe I don't think he's ever spoken out on race as such in any. I don't think you can quote me a speech anywhere where statement concerning any race or the racial problem. He said here today, he made segregated schools in Alabama. That's right. And then he also said here that, well, I would say that this was pertaining to, in the aspect that I was inferring what he was talking about. I don't think that this is a racial, has some racial overtone, but all he's saying is he's advocating for the state of Alabama that he thought that was best, the best system down there. But he also said, I would imagine, later on he said that as far as Alabama is concerned now, we have an integrated system. As far as West Virginia is concerned, he said it didn't make a difference what system West Virginia chose. But
well, I don't know. I think he's got a pretty good chance, I'd say, because he's fair for the colored people and especially for the white people, and I like to see him get in. So, what do the customers in your barber chair say? Well, I'd say that if he does win, he's got a pretty good chance too, to move from the point, yeah.
no, I don't think it's possible. I think the people in West Virginia will stick with Nixon.
Do you think it's a race question? Do you think that would bar voting for Wallace?
I think Wallace will not get the Negroes out here in West Virginia.
How about you? Would you vote for him?
No, I wouldn't. I think that some of them probably will. I think that many West Virginians are going to look at gay states around the planet, and some of them will vote for him.
I'd say there's a great majority in West Virginia that will vote for him.
Why?